A warm welcome to anyone who's a regular attendee of our webinars, but also welcome to anyone new. My name's Bea. I'm the Director of Customer Success here at Wazoku, and I'm joined by my colleague Abby, who I'll let introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Abby Anderson. I'm the sales engineer here at Wazoku, helping people to understand the benefits of the product.
Thanks, Abby. Lovely. So let's start by just sharing my screen and we can kick off. Abby, if you could just confirm for me when you can see the screen, then I know I'm doing the right thing at the right time.
Yeah, it's there, Bea.
Lovely. Great. So as I mentioned, thanks for everyone for joining us. And the purpose of today's webinar is to tell you a little bit more about how you can use Wazoku both to identify opportunities for new products and services, as well as take those through a development cycle. So as per the usual format, we're going to do a quick introduction into Wazoku and how we help organizations to innovate with internal and external communities or audiences, and then talk a little bit about ways in which product development can be done in sort of non-traditional ways, before giving you a demo on how you can use the platform to identify new products, services, as I mentioned. Wonderful. So just a little bit about us. So as Wazuku, we work with organizations to embed ways of working and processes for innovating at scale, allowing organizations to crowdsource ideas, suggestions, problems from different audiences, be those within the organization, known to the organization, or to a fully open crowd. And we do this using a method called challenge-driven innovation. So rather than just asking anyone for any idea, we're focused on actually breaking down important goals and opportunities into specific challenges, then asking people to contribute to those challenges. So, as well as providing the platform, of course, to do this and to be able to capture those ideas and manage them through to conclusion, what we also want our organizations to do is have full visibility and the metrics on what's happening to be able to better improve those processes over time. So, really providing the end to end capability for organizations to crowdsource ideas from anyone at any time as things move around and things change around organizations. So, on to the topic of today's webinar, which is about new products and services. And as often innovation webinars start, and I'm not going to be guilty of that today, is telling you all the stories about how blockbusters failed and Polaroid failed and why organizations need to innovate. Of course, we're all probably working in the field know that even outside our specific organization, firms that we come across every day are forever competing in new ways. And actually, organizations are really having to rethink the way in which they compete. So, new scenarios are cropping up all the time. If we think about emerging markets such as Airbnb and Uber, there are different forms of competition and things are happening at a greater pace. So, organizations really need to rethink how they remain competitive and the pace at which they are driving change. What we're also seeing is actually when we're seeing product services, challenges, opportunities being scouted, that organizations are often having to think about a wider space for value creation. So it's not the conventional way of let's develop a product or a service over a longer period of time. What people are having to do and organizations are having to do in response to competition is think about more creative ways. So it's not just about the product or service, it's new ways of doing that. Is it a digital way? Is it non-digital? How do we interact with our customers? How do organizations interact with the audiences around them and with other organizations? So there's more pressure for organizations to think about creatively problem solving rather than just traditional ways of working, which are very much based around process improvement and about the mechanics of ensuring that organizations can operate. Of course, organizations also need to, which isn't new to now, but there's more demand, need to explore new ideas and experiment more frequently. So, of course, in response to competition and the need to be able to create new forms of value, they need to do that by coming up with new ideas and continuously experimenting to see have we got the right product market fit, and need to be in a continuous cycle of experimentation, something that we know with risk-averse organizations isn't always an easy thing to achieve. And also, of course, organizations are continually, as well as coming up with those new ideas and experimenting themselves, are having to look around and permanently think about what opportunities. If we think about a typical innovation funnel, not every new idea we come up with is going to succeed, which is why we continuously experiment. But we can't just think about that in isolation. There are lots of opportunities around the boundaries and even further away from organizations as we know them. And part of doing this process well and utilizing whether it's technology, working with other companies, is to continuously keep an eye out for new opportunities and really build upon those. But it's not without its challenges. So looking at what we see and other reports by people who are far better researched than me are thinking about is, of course, development times. And this comes back to what I was just saying. It's actually a big organizational problem and a huge obstacle because, as I say, as customers' expectations are shifting quickly, so is the demand for getting things out. And development times, particularly in organizations who had traditionally had a longer time to be able to develop those products and services, are really struggling to actually overcome those. So we know that that's quite a frequent problem that organizations have. Missing crucial growth opportunities. And this is actually, again, having your eyes out and always looking at what might be happening in new markets or new areas. So 72% of organizations who were interviewed in a recent study by, I think it was Gartner, was saying that actually they're really out missing on those opportunities because they just aren't looking in the right place. And finally, which we see across the board, it's not just specific to new products and services, is organizations struggling to learn from past mistakes. So actually, of course, as there's a turnover of people and organizations might not have the knowledge to hand around what was done 5 years ago, people are continuing to make the same mistakes. And that's not just the fault of the individual, it's that organization and collective intelligence and having that archive. So we know that these are sort of problems that exist when it comes to new product service development and just moving organizations forward. One thing we've also seen, and I don't think it's specific to us, so a lot of people are seeing this, is actually how difficult it can be for organizations as well when we're continuously having to compete, think ahead, and really explore those breakthrough operations, is get that balance right when it comes to exploiting, getting the balance between exploring and exploiting. So, what we've referred to in previous webinars about the ambidextrous organization, what organizations really need to do is get that right balance. So how can we continually make things better for existing customers, ensure that we remain relevant, whilst having our, our sort of eyes on the horizon, be ahead of the curve in thinking about that. So lots of actual challenges to getting this right. But it's not to say that there aren't solutions. And what we're seeing from organizations that we work with is people aren't taking a kind of one size fits all, a single solution to be able to grapple with some of the problems that we've just discussed. And actually, what we're seeing is organizations are no longer just working within the confines or barriers of the organization to come up with new ideas. Of course, people have done acquisitions for years. That's not something new to us. But what we're seeing more and more of is the ability to work with different communities, be those experts who don't employ, such as strategic partners, competitors, to help solve those problems, the company employees themselves, both in terms of helping to solve those problems through the sort of more incremental change as well as those new products, and actually really thinking about a more diverse crowd, the rest of the world and global resources in order to help address some of those problems we alluded to earlier. So this is thinking about anyone from, you know, people working in academia, consultants, companies, retirees, in fact, that whole global world of talent who's available to help address these problems, capture those insights, find those opportunities, and do that in a way that's happening all under one roof. So it's no longer about let's just try and look internally to find the solution. It's how can we work with different communities of people, both to identify new opportunities, but also solve problems, develop problems, and actually come up with new solutions and services. So when it comes to using Wazuku, what we're seeing organizations work with us to do is quite a range of different things if we think of a product, a new service, new product development cycle. So firstly is right at the front end is how can, and this is more on the open innovation side, is how can we actually work with us to identify new opportunities. So that might be let's do some research into potential market. Let's go and find problems that we want to be able to solve rather than just going out and trying to fix a problem. So we're seeing more and more thinking about how can we go external to be able to find opportunities. And that's the same as well is actually the startup scouting. So a lot of organizations we work with are, of course, building an ever increasing network of startups and thinking about that more as an incubator. But it's also how can we go beyond the tech crunch kind of list of organizations that we might go to try and find those news. So it might be going to an open crowd and saying, can you recommend someone? Might there be someone in your building or your shared working space who's able to come up with a solution to our problem or even got an interesting startup? So seeing more and more of that. Open competition. So again, people are no longer just going to the organization to say, can you come up with a new product or service, but actually who's already got something. So Waitrose have done this really well in the past of going out to existing suppliers who've got no idea for a existing product and service. And of course, the internal incubators. So Abby's going to show you a little bit more about how the platform's used to be able to facilitate this. But again, institutions might be working with fintech, and a great way that they're using or working with us is really to ensure that with the internal incubators, sorry, it's not just the external, it's more asking employees to develop new products and services to foster that entrepreneurship. So thinking about the incubator, not just around the fintech and the startup, of course, but who's in our network and who can we work with internally to help come up with products and services. And more the open ideation. So as we get further down we've found some potential opportunities, we've potentially come to our employees, they've come up with some new products and services ideas. So we might get to a stage in the development process where we can't actually find the complete solution or we can't develop that solution internally. So what we're often seeing is people will get to a certain point in their product development cycle and then go out to an open crowd, so using our crowd or similar crowds to be able to come up with specific solutions if they can't find that internally. And finally, what are we seeing organizations doing in terms of both opportunity and development is actually coming up with a design for something. So you may have internally come up with a really great potential idea. It might have come, as I say, from inside the organization or outside it, but it's about the execution. And we know that there's a finite amount of resource and capacity in our organizations. So, how can we think or utilize skills, expertise outside of the organization to come up with designs? So, an example of an organization we've been working with on this is Decathlon. They had, of course, paddle boards and wanted to be able to create instantly inflatable paddle boards. So, part of that, too, one of the challenges they ran is they had pretty much got the whole model designed in house. But what they needed is a specific valve that could be used as part of the pump, ran a design challenge. So, again, it's not necessarily right at the front end that we need to think about that process, but it's engaging different crowds, different expertise at different points in the process to really make that as capability wise as easy and capacity wise as easy and as effective as possible. So I'm now going to hand over to Abby, who's going to give us a demo of actually how you can use Wazoku to be able to do this.
Perfect, thanks B. So today we're going to walk through two of those examples. Firstly, looking at how to ideate with your employees and to foster an entrepreneurship scheme, looking for new products and services. And secondly, looking into the startup scouting, how you can utilize the platform and co-creation communities in order to find startups who are within your area. Okay. So welcome to the Wazoku platform. If you've been to our previous webinars, you've seen that it's fully customizable to your brand and that you can feature different content on the homepage. Today, we're specifically going to look at one internal community, or as we call it, an idea space, called the Innovation Lab. Within the Innovation Lab, we're running a couple of challenges, helping us to spot trends which are happening within our industry that our employees might be aware of, things that they've seen within competitors, keeping them aware of how the market's moving. And secondly, this product and services challenge. How we often see these challenges work well is when you get a high level of buy-in from employees who are wanting to further their career through learning how to implement innovations, or they want to add to their CV that they've implemented an idea at a large organization. Potentially they want to be able to build out canvases and to be able to take that skill forward and to use it on other programs. So the best cases that we have of this is when it becomes an end-to-end training program where you get the benefits of the new products and services, they get implemented within the business, but the employees that are involved with that really come along with it as part of a training module. The way that we see this working is you go out with an open call for ideas, framed in your new products and services challenge, and people are able to submit their idea with quite a simple form, looking at the problem that they've identified, thinking still problem first innovations rather than solution first, and then secondly into what their proposed solution for that problem is. After they've submitted this idea, their ideas, we envisage that you would use an innovation council or a panel of cross-functional employees in order to review those ideas, utilising our evaluation criteria, which are aligned to what new products and services you're looking to embed. As usual, we'd expect you to be clear to the crowd when they join the challenge as to what these criteria are, as if you're upfront about what a good idea looks like, it really helps people to submit good ideas as they're aware of what you're looking for. Evaluators will be able to come in here, score against their criteria, and have a panel discussion at the bottom as to which ideas you see merit in developing forward. By removing a lot of the ideas now, it prevents you going back to idea creators and asking them to spend more time in a program developing out ideas that you don't actually have any desire to take further forward. After the Innovation Council stage, we envisage you having a solution design stage. This is where the training module really starts to kick in with your employees as you start to build things out in either a lean board or a business model canvas. This is then a standardized way, which is often used in innovation to develop out ideas that your employees can start to learn and understand and take part in, furthering the innovation skills across your organization, but also in them at an individual level. After they've designed out the solution further, there's usually a pitch stage, the sort of a Dragon's Den or a Shark Tank approach, where employees get to hone their pitching skills and pitch to senior leadership the benefits of their ideas and why they should take it forward. This can also be used as an innovation event day, showcasing what's happening in your program to the rest of the organization and driving adoption for years going forwards, increasing the level of engagement as people understand what you're doing and see the benefits in partaking next year or when you continue to run the challenge. After that, you'll start working on implementing the ideas, getting them embedded before moving them up to a completed stage once they're live within the organization. Once you've got the ideas live within the organization, you started generating some revenue from your new product streams, showcase back on the challenge or on the homepage of the idea space, the Innovation Lab, to say what you've done, what you've achieved, and who also was tied to this, making it part of a reward and recognition program for the employees who took the time to take part and learn all of those new skills. I'm now going to showcase the startup community, so how people are utilizing the platform in order to engage with startups in their industry. So welcome to the startup community. The startup community is a microsite, or as we call it, a co-creation community that sits aside from your main platform. Your main platform is for your employees, for your internal ideation, and is usually shielded by single sign-on, meaning only people who are within your organization's Active Directory have the right to access it. Alongside that main platform is then a co-creation community where you can start to engage with externals, so potentially startups, partners who you're used to working with, or universities that you have partnerships with. Using all of the same functionality as the main site, you're able to run challenges to this area. A typical challenge that we see is a registration, allowing startups to come and register their interest in working with your organization. If you use this challenge to collect a lot of information on the startup, so the platform really understands who they are and what their business model is, you can then, alongside this challenge, start running a problem facing challenge. So this challenge would be used to collect problems that your organization is facing, that the platform's machine learning will then start to recommend startups from the startups challenge to who can potentially solve those problems. This can then start matching startups who are registering their interest to work with you to problems that your organization is facing that you would like to start alleviating. Alongside those problem matching, startup matching functionality, you can also run typical challenges to your external crowd, like B was mentioning. So potentially you've run a challenge internally and you've not quite solved the problem that you were looking to, such as this one on long-term corrosion of existing pipelines. You could then turn to your startup community and see if they have a potential solution to solve that problem. Okay, that's everything from me today. Does anyone have any questions on any of that?
No, I think that's great, Abby. Just a question from me. So we talked about the sort of difference there. You mentioned co-creation and internal. So you're just able just to talk about what the main differences between those really are.
Yeah, it's all of the same functionality and it all utilizes our usual challenge framing process. So you can frame a challenge in exactly the same way and often use the same workflow wherever you're posing it. The only difference between the internal and the co-creation is the audience that you're posing that challenge to. So if you're posing it on the main platform, you're posing it to your employees, so asking your employees for their solutions to solve that problem. If you're putting it on a co-creation community, you're going out to a known audience of your choice. So that could be posing the problem to your suppliers, universities of your choice, or in the example here, startups who you're connected with.
Fantastic. And have you seen any organizations recently running the same challenge to different communities or audiences at the same time?
Yeah, absolutely. You could do. You can run a challenge to whatever audience you want. You can also then sort of compare the difference between the solutions that you get to see whether or not you have the knowledge internally to solve the problem using current resources, or whether it makes more sense to go out into a partnership model. Sometimes, as you were discussing earlier, there's quite a long development time in developing new products and services. So you can run a challenge internally, identify a solution, and then go out to market to find a more fully formed version of that solution that you can then bring in-house to speed up that time to development and get things live faster.
That's really cool. Thanks.
No problem.
Um, Lovely. Okay, so I think I'll just then for the next couple of minutes, as I mentioned, Abby's taken us through the what we can do in terms of the platform and really examples of how organizations are using the platform to say identify new opportunities internally and with known crowds. But as I mentioned earlier, one of the key things that we're seeing is actually how can you go to crowds of people that you perhaps don't know, that you wouldn't come across in your day-to-day working life. So I'm just going to take you onto our Innocentive platform and talk you through some of the different types of challenges in this area. It's all open for you to go and see the types of ways that this is being used. But if you give me a second, I'll share my screen and talk you through. Wonderful. So if I start off here, so for those of you who don't know about Innocentive, Innocentive is our open innovation community. So it gives your organization the potential to run a challenge, not just to, as I say, audiences that you know, communities of people inside and peripheral to your organization, but also really go out to a wider crowd. We've got around 500,000 and growing registered solvers globally. This has been built up over the last 20 years, and we're continuing to engage with new opportunities, with new businesses, with universities to be able to grow that crowd. But what this really allows you to do, as I said, is do things in parallel in a way that you might have done traditionally in a more linear fashion. So, as I mentioned, what we're seeing is people who are running challenges to even identify problems further on. So you'll see an example challenge here by one of the organization using this, who are looking for problems to be solved to improve global health and wellness. So opportunity to actually find, are there problems that our products and services could be used to solve? So right at that top end of the funnel in terms of understanding potential problem areas, and then actually working those problems through more fully. There might be internal solutions to be able to solve that problem. It might be partners, it might be acquisitions. So just some of the things that we're seeing. You'll also be able to go in and say or see in our live challenge center. I'm sure my colleague Rob can just share the link to this as well on the chat. Go and have a look at how organizations are saying, okay, there's a very specific solution that we might be looking for. So in this instance, the organization was looking for sort of new and innovative technology in order to eliminate tailpipe emissions from gas, diesel, or advanced concept engines. So actually existing products want to be able to think about new solutions, not an end-to-end entirely different product, but again, do some market research and understand what's already out there, and of course, make an award for that. So we're seeing everything from new applications, and as an example here of different challenges for ideas for applications, as well as more fully formed solutions. So really allowing you to, alongside your internal processes of coming up with ideas or working with external parties, is thinking about how can we actually both validate research that we've already done. How do we keep our minds and our eyes ahead of what's already going on, not just looking at research as something that needs to be done in the organization, but think more broadly beyond that. So please go and have a look at challenges in our challenge center. These are open to everyone. And if you want to, or you think you've got the solution to one of these challenges, please register as one of our solvers. There are some fantastic awards to be had. And certainly from my perspective, find out about really interesting problems. So it's always good to be able to use that as a resource to say, look, is there solutions of organizations facing similar issues to us, and how might we position this? So great resource for you to be able to use to both solve problems, identify solutions in places that you wouldn't typically go looking, but also as a bit of a just, validation, as we're all facing similar problems. And so let's look at it. Wonderful. So looks like we have a question just in the chat there. So thanks
Mm.
there from Simon. That's a very good point around open innovation and utilizing this. This isn't necessarily just about coming up with a solution. It's a great way to be able to showcase your brand and be able to showcase what you're doing, be that around your sustainability efforts, but also engaging a wider crowd of people in your innovation efforts and new products and services. So we will pause now for any questions you have about what's been covered. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing you next week. So our next webinar, if you're interested in joining us next week, will be more on the practitioner side around how you can recognize and reward contributions to your innovation challenges. So again, not just thinking about how do we motivate our employees, but thinking about how can we better engage with startups who might want to work with us? How can we incentivize real kind of solution owners to come and collaborate with us? And how do we, of course, recognize and incentivize participation within our own organizations? Lovely. So I'll just give it a minute. If there's, oh, looks like someone's typing. Thank you, Dino. Oh, he said, great webinar. Thanks. Thank you for attending, Dino. Doesn't look like there are any questions. As always, if you want to get in touch with me or Abby, then you're always welcome to. Rob will just put my email in the chat, just ba@wazoku.com. If you're interested in finding out more or working with us or just discussing in more detail what was covered today. Great. Thanks, everyone, and see you next week.